Welcome to the Big Money Stylist Podcast.
Hey.
How's it going?
It's going. I'm excited.
I have Grace with me. Talk to me about, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Where should I start? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe we'll start right now and then work backwards.
Okay. So I am currently in phase 3, trying to finish that up. And
Before April?
Yes. The goal is to be licensed by the time convention comes around.
Cool.
And I feel like I'm on that path.
So
Almost there.
I feel like I could be wrong. So if somebody else is out there and is like, you are dead wrong, then I'm super sorry. You are, I think, on track to be our fastest graduate.
I think so.
I think so.
Which is crazy. But yeah,
I mean, you
started
got in there
July.
and you got shit done.
Yes. And I don't know. So I did the virtual convention at the end of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And then my husband and I talked about if we wanted to do the academy right away or if I should wait just financially wise. So I gave myself, it took a little over a year because I wanted to pay it all in full. I didn't want to have to do payment plans or anything. So we saved up enough to do one payment.
So you were doing NBR to save up?
Yes.
For the academy?
Yeah. So I started offering it immediately in January. So January of 21, I started offering NBR. I did a few model calls just to get a few people in the door so I could start promoting it.
Yeah.
And then July of 22, I finally joined the academy, and now I'm almost done. And it's February.
Right.
So, yeah.
So if you graduate by April, that's under a year.
Yeah.
And by I mean you are, because you only have a
there's
few
no
assignments left. You're like, no, bitch, I'm graduating in April.
It is happening. I've put it in the
is
universe.
happening. That's right. And really, there's 6 weeks-ish till convention, a little less than 2 months. So,
Yeah.
And you only have a handful of assignments left. So, I mean,
Yes.
there's
It's
no
possible,
if.
you guys.
There is
It
no
is
if.
possible.
Okay, so did you say you work in a salon? You own a salon?
So I'm in a studio suite right now.
Okay.
I'm at Sola Studios.
Okay.
In St. Louis.
Okay. So
That's nice.
How long have you been doing hair before you joined the academy?
I've been doing hair since 2009. So in August, it'll be 14 years.
I talked about this with April, and I thought it was so funny because I'll just share the story again because it was pretty funny. But my sister-in-law that I did hair with, she would tell people, they'd be like, oh, how long have you been doing hair? And she'd say 15 years. And I'd be like, oh, she's old, old for 15 years. And now people are like, how long have you been doing hair? I'm like, 15 years. I'm like, I'm an old lady now. I am now the old lady that has done hair for 15 years.
Yep. It's weird because I'm only 33 and I don't feel like I'm old.
It's like we're twins.
I know.
When's your birthday?
April.
Oh, yeah, mine's in
So
June.
right after convention, I'll turn 34.
So basically, your celebration for your birthday is graduating convention.
Yes.
You're like, I earned
That's why I
that
want it
birthday
so bad.
present. Birthday month. We're
Yes.
just going to do a birthday month.
Yep.
So how was describe your work-life pre-convention and pre-academy and then work-life after.
So pre-academy, I would say my schedule was Monday through Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's a firefighter, so I worked my hours around
His
4 days off. So that
Okay.
way one of us is always home with the kids.
Okay.
But if something came up, I'd be like, okay, can I find somebody to watch the kids so I can go in and do something for a client instead of just saying I'm off today. It's gonna
How
have to
was
wait.
that basically working when your husband was home and not really seeing him?
It was a lot.
I
I felt like I was grateful that one of us was always home with the kids, but then at some point it's like, am I ever
You're like,
gonna
am I even
see
married?
you? Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
hi. See each other in passing because
So
he'd get home and I'd leave.
Well, how was your guys' relation? Well, obviously it's good you're still married, but
Yes.
how did that take a toll on your relationship?
We were in a bad place for a little while.
I
It
bet.
was just
Yeah.
stressful.
That is stressful. So then how was working behind the chair life?
I feel like I'm pretty good at leaving my home life out of work. So I was able to come in and then pour into my clients the way I needed to, but then I would get home and I was just mentally
Dead.
exhausted,
You were
physically
dead.
exhausted. Yeah, I didn't want to talk, and he'd always be like, "Why are you who pissed in your Cheerios today? Like, what's going on? I'm like, I've been talking all day and giving all day. Like, I don't want to do it at home now.
I have nothing left to give. I'm on
all
empty.
I have right now.
Yeah. So how long did you do that burnout for?
Oh my God, too long.
You're like, I don't know how I'm alive.
Yeah, before I went off on my own in a studio suite, I worked at a salon, and it was whatever hours they wanted me to work was what I worked.
So you didn't really have a choice?
No.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I didn't have a say in the matter.
Okay. I find it so frustrating, like, every hairstylist I meet that's not in the academy, I honestly just want to be like, what are you doing? You don't have to do that.
Yes.
But for some reason, like, what's funny as a doctor, if you were like, well, I have to get in, they're like, well, that's nice. I'm not open.
Right.
Or if I need an antibiotic, they're like, well, that's nice. You can schedule an appointment like anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But hairstylists, we're like, oh, it's okay. It's midnight on Saturday and you're going to church tomorrow. Girl, come right in. I'm already waiting.
I've got 24-hour access to my studio, so let's just meet up at 3 a.m.
Right. You're like, let's meet up. It's fine. Let me do your hair for church. It's great. Like,
right.
So what initially, like, how did you find the academy?
So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. So I initially found it through Ani.
Okay.
And then...
Oh, because she was from there also, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We worked like 5 minutes from each other. Didn't know each other, but...
Oh, how crazy.
It was small world. And then,
It
so
is
that's how
such a
I found
small world,
Danielle, was watching her journey. And I really, like, Danielle's story really resonated with me, especially with, like, the whole marriage aspect and just not being in a good place. I'm like, well, damn,
And the kids, and you're like,
like, that's me. Like, that's us. And I don't know. I waited a very long time to actually join just because of the salon I was at.
How long did you wait?
I found...
So you saw it and you were just
Yes.
like, I'm just going to watch from
Found
over here.
NBR. It was 2017 because I was pregnant with my daughter. And signed up for Mastermind because I was like, okay, I want more of the intimate setting before I go to like a big convention because I want a very hands-on, someone kind of hovering over me, watching my work before I go into a big thing. And then was approved for a Mastermind class in, I think it was March of 2018. I was like, oh, well, shit, that's like 3 weeks before my daughter's due.
Oh.
I can't travel.
Right.
So I was like, oh, well, I'll reach out again like the fall time when I'm back at work and everything. And then the salon I was at told me extensions weren't an option. Like that's not a direction they wanted the salon to go in. So
Which is interesting.
Nixed it. And I was like, okay. So I sat and watched it for another 2 years. 2020 happened. I left, started in my studio when they offered it virtually. I was like, this is it. Like, I'm doing it.
Oh, you're like, oh my gosh, this is it. What's funny is it sounds like it literally just kept like slapping you in the face. Like, we're here, we're here, we're here.
I wanted it so bad.
We're ready when you are.
And I would watch and listen to all the changes that they would implement. I listened to the podcast. So as soon as I went off on my own, it took, I would say, January of 21. I cut Saturdays out. And then I want to say summer of last year, it was August of last year, I said, I'm done working Mondays.
Right.
So Saturdays and Mondays, gone. So it's nice because when my husband's 4-day falls on like the Friday to Monday, I'm with him for 3 of those days.
Right. So how has your relationship improved? Obviously, great. You're still together.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's on a whole nother level. We actually like...
He's like, damn, who are you?
I know. We go on date nights now, which
Love
has
that.
been... It was like the first time in...
Yeah.
We've been married for almost 12 years.
And you're like getting to know each other again, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I kind of like you.
I know. Like who?
It's almost like you get those
What
like
is this?
little butterflies, and you're like, we're going on a date. And
Yes.
You're like, are you gonna kiss me after? Like, we're gonna go home. Like,
There was a little transition period because when you go from never seeing each other to seeing each other more, it's like maybe you should go back to work. Like
you're like on
I don't know how to
thought,
handle this.
Maybe I should put Saturdays back in there.
Right. But no, it's been great.
That's
I
good.
absolutely love it.
So, did you ever have? How old are your kids?
They are 10, 8, and 4.
Okay. So years ago, when you were like burnout phase, like how were you like mom wise? Because I know for me, like I was a raging bitch.
Oh, for sure.
Like I would get home and they'd be like, mom. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, ugh. Like I would give them as much as I could, but it was so bitchy.
I still find times where if it's been a more exhausting or a very talkative day at work, if I get home around bedtime, I'm like, I'm hiding in my car or I'm just not going to get home until I know they're in bed because it's like they get a second win because they're so excited to see you.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I do not have this energy. So there are definitely areas that I still need to improve on.
Right.
But it's gotten so much better.
I feel like for me, just even from when I first started to now, I think my kids are like, oh, okay, like we like having you around.
Yes.
And because before when I was just working all the time, I was working because it's like me and my husband at the time like weren't doing great. And I was like, well, I'm going to go to work because I don't want to be home.
Mm-hmm.
And then my kids would suffer, but then I would get home and my kids would be like, quote unquote, like annoying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with this. But a lot of the time when I would leave, they would cry. Like, Mom, you're never home. Like, of course you're going to work. Like, or they'd be like, Mom, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working. They're like, you're always working.
Yep.
And so when I actually started to like show up at home and to actually do things, they were like, oh, you're not going to work? Like, they were like surprised. And in that moment, I was like, I am a garbage mom. Like, I feel, and that mom guilt was so real for me because I was like, I have like let all these years go by and I'm trying so hard to provide a life for them because I was a single mom for a long time. And I was like, I'm trying so hard to provide this life for you when in turn it's actually creating me more problems because now my kids, like, not that they hated me, but it's like I hated me because I'm like, I am not a great mom when I'm home. And when I'm gone, I feel bad because I'm gone all the time. And so for me, when I like started implementing all these changes, I was like, okay, actually like enjoy my kids. They're not so bad.
Yes.
Like, and then but I definitely do have those days where I'm still burnt out. Like some days I take like 4 clients instead of like 4 or 5 instead of my usual like 2 or 3.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, I'm like,
Yes. And I definitely notice with at least like my kids' behavior when I'm fully present with them.
Yeah.
I'm not near as irritated so much because they're not doing horrible things to get my attention.
Yes, because they have
my
attention
attention
from you. Yes.
And I definitely, there are days where I still struggle. Like I'm still trying to like push everything out on social media. I'm like, 5 more minutes, just 5 more minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom. And then they go and, put
Create a big
toothpaste all over the
mess.
bathroom or rub Vaseline all over my shower doors. That was fun.
You're like, but isn't that funny because you look and you're like, this was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the behavioral, not so much. That was definitely your choice. But you're like, this is my fault because I kept telling you, wait a minute. And they're just like, Mom, please give me your attention.
Yeah.
Because they don't have anyone. Like, you
Right.
are their person.
Yes.
But it's so hard. So, I mean, I'm sure tons of hairstylists out there feel that same thing, that mom guilt where they're like, I have to provide for you, but I can't spend time. Like, I can't do both.
Yes.
So that's what I've loved the most about this whole program is I'm like, no, I can have both.
Yeah.
And what I was just talking about with Heather was she brought it up and I was like, oh, yeah, I do that. Like, she's like, every time you come up with these stories about why you can or can't do something, like ask yourself, why not? And so I would do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do that. Because every once in a while I'd be like, oh, well, I really want to do this or I really want to do that. And, oh, but I can't. And then I have 8,000 reasons as to why it won't work.
Yep.
And then as soon as I ask myself, well, why can't you do that? The reasons are like, poof.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I actually have no reasons why I can't do that. Or if I'm like, oh, well, I'm not supposed to. Well, who says? Oh, well, actually no one.
Yes.
So it's interesting that just that like mindset shift that happens and not everybody has that.
Yeah. There have been some things where I take it and implement it immediately,
Mm-hmm.
and then others where I'm like, oh, I don't have to
You
implement that
resist
just
a
yet.
little.
I'm like, it can wait a little bit, and then it bites me in the butt every
Right.
time.
You're like, if only I did that before, I probably wouldn't have had
I wouldn't be
this
feeling this way
problem.
right now.
Exactly. So how, again, like your marriage has improved, your relationship with your kids have improved. Like, what about yourself?
I definitely try to put myself first more often now. Like, I actually will try to take time, like, even if it's just like taking a hot bath by my, like,
Isn't it funny that a bath, you're like, I
it's
just need a
so-
bath.
I can't tell you. There was a period where I was like, I don't think I've done something like that for myself in over a year. And then it finally started happening, and I try to do it like once or twice a week now. It's just my time.
Mm-hmm. That's
The
my
little salts and everything. Candle.
I even buy like bath bombs and I put the I
yes.
turn all the lights off and I get my book and I'm like,
I turn on my spa music.
Oh, dang, you're one step ahead of me.
Yes.
But it's nice because you can actually put yourself first, which is interesting because as hairstylists, maybe even just like as humans, being like doing things for yourself is selfish.
Yeah.
So, which is ridiculous. Like,
No.
you're the only one that's going to take care of you. You're the only one that's going to, you're the only one that knows your goals and your dreams. Even if you share them, nobody knows the extent of them.
Right.
So how, or if you were to tell somebody, like if somebody asked you, hey, like I've noticed you're in the academy and I noticed you do NBR and it's a lot of money. I really just don't know. Like, what would you tell them?
Yes, it's a lot of money. But if you are willing to just put the work in and actually do what is needed for yourself, it is worth it in tenfold. I would do it again. I would invest the money again.
100 times.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
100 times over. And I think the hardest part was I didn't necessarily need to convince my husband, but it was just hard to imagine that the lifestyle that we have now versus what we had when I first started doing hair is a completely different realm that he did not think was possible.
Right.
So,
well, and especially I'm sure that like when you guys met, you were a completely different person and he obviously is in love with you.
Yeah.
But
we were
I
in
imagine,
college.
Yeah. I imagine now though that he's like, dang, you're a boss ass bitch. Like he's like,
we are both very stubborn individuals. So we butt heads a lot because we both don't like being wrong.
Right.
But I love proving people wrong. So
you're like,
it's always like a challenge. Like, it's okay. You don't think I can do that? I'm going to.
You're like, if you wouldn't mind, can you please tell me I can't graduate by April so that I can just be more motivated?
So we were just talking about this the other day before I flew out here. And I was like, I love proving people wrong. And then he goes on, he goes, yeah, I know. That's why I try, like, I nudge you that way. I'm like, oh, so you purposely try to, like, piss me off just to motivate me? I'm like, that's a little weird,
I'm not going to lie. My husband does that too. I wonder if that's why. Because he'll just, like peck and peck. And I'm like, babe. I'm like, shut up. Like,
I'll set goals and he'll be like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I know.
What do you mean,
am
I like, sure?
It's going to happen now.
You're like,
watch
I'm pretty
me.
sure, but now I have to do it.
Exactly.
So that's funny. So you're in an intensive right now.
Yes.
What are you learning in your intensive? Because when you came it was phase 1.
Yeah. I feel like this intensive has been so many aha moments. Just like the way I'm sectioning. I've been doing a little too sharp of an angle and I need to round it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Beadwork is there, but I haven't been doing enough like nubbin. And now seeing that and how she Courtney pointed that out for me, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. And then we just did placement. And I have cut wefts in half before, but never truly understood why I was doing it. I just I'm like, oh, sure, let's try that.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
And then today it was literally just like,
you're like,
mind
oh
blown.
My gosh, I can place hair for my color.
Because I think an area I've definitely struggled in is like color-wise is creating that bold money piece. And all of my work just always turns out super blended. Doesn't look bad.
Same. I have that same problem.
But I have a couple clients where I'm like, why am I struggling so much with this bold pop around the face? And then that's what they're doing right now on Mary. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes. So were you at convention last year?
No. Oh. This is my first live event.
Oh my gosh,
ever.
So you're going to love it.
And
you're going to be licensed, so it's going to be like way completely.
Well, I know. I'm probably going to cry a lot.
That's okay. A lot of crying happens.
Yes.
It's fine. Well, I was going to say last year at convention, I was doing a bold money piece color on a brunette. And it was like brunette with a big bold money piece. And I thought I was nailing it. I was like, I got this. I had practiced on a mannequin before. And we did the color and I brought her back and me and Luz were partners. And she was like, oh yeah, no, that's not going to work. And she's like, we have to add more foils. And I was like, well, why? And so she kind of explained to me like, oh, we need to put them here, but not only do we need to put them up by the face, we need that like corner in the bottom because that connects.
That pocket.
And I just remember feeling at the time, truthfully, I felt so stupid because I'm like, why didn't I know that? Like, not that she was correcting me, but I'm like, she's correcting me. This is my stage model and I can't even do it right. Like somebody has to help me. And it was in that moment, I literally went off stage and cried because I'm like, why am I here? I don't know what I'm doing.
Those humbling moments, you know, like knock you down, but you're so appreciative of them. But at the time, it catches you in your feelings because you're already frustrated, and then you got like, somebody correcting you. And it's like, oh shit.
So I mean, luckily, like, you know, we're friends. So I went up after and I was like, Luz, I gotta tell you, like, I'm a real whiny bitch about this. Like, I am having a moment and I'm butthurt, like, because I feel like artists do that. Like, if you try to critique an artist, and I find that a lot, especially with feedback, if you're you're trying to give them feedback, and you're trying to help them grow.
Yeah.
And then they're offended. And I have not had that happen very often, but it's your art and people are critiquing that, and that's hard.
It's your baby.
It's my baby. And I was like, I did this on stage and I was so proud of myself. And I was like crying and I was like, it's fine. And she's like, no. She's like, I actually did that when I first did my first one. And then the only reason I know how to put that there is because I've done it before. And so the biggest lesson for me in that was like communication, number one, because that could have happened with a client. And it was pretty, but it was too blended.
Right.
And that's not the look we were going for. So it was really interesting because I was like, okay, how do I take this? And because of the academy, if that would have been any other situation, like, who knows? Maybe I would have quit. Maybe I would have just hated Luz forever. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, rude. She had to fix my color. But in that moment, I was like, okay, how can I learn from this to make myself a better artist? Because honestly, like, she's not wrong. When she did that and we fixed it and added more foils, and when I saw everything was done, I was like, oh, damn, like that looks so much better than like the blended. And blended is great, but if that's not what you're going for, that's hard. So I think a lot of the ways inside of the academy, like it's helped me learn how to course correct faster.
Yes.
Because I like catch it sooner. I'm like, okay, I'm being crazy, or okay, I'm doing this. And I mean,
I think one thing that's helped me get through the academy as quickly as I have is I want feedback. I have gone, it was almost 2 years, 3 years without any sort of education, and being able to finally have people that want to see my work and genuinely critique it to make me a better artist. I like, all right, I'm turning it in. Like, it might not be perfect. It might be perfect, but I'm not going to sit here and obsess and pick it apart myself.
Right.
I'm going to let somebody who knows exactly what to look for do that for me.
I actually highly encourage people. I'm like, hey, you know what? Take a photo. The easiest way to give yourself feedback is to take a photo, because 9 times out of 10 it looks different on the head than it does in a photo. Yes. And you're like, oh, I actually had a student. She sends me feedback sends me work for her power practice every morning. She'll cover the bead that's like trash, and she'll be like, just ignore this bead right here.
This one doesn't exist.
My finger is over this one. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But she has grown so much just in the last 2 weeks of her doing that, because she's like, I want to graduate. I want to do it. Like, tell me what to do. And I was like, okay, send me your work and I'll give you some feedback and we'll kind of go back and forth. And she's like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it every single day, because she's like, you don't even have to give me feedback, but just being accountable to know that you're expecting it every single day. And she's sent it every single morning.
Start doing
that. And if you'd like to DM me every single morning. So yeah, like that for me, like feedback was huge for me. Like I was the same. I was the girl that was like, every Monday they had a feedback call, and I was like, I got to get all my photos in and hopefully she calls my name. Because that was when Ani was doing like live feedback. And so I was like, I have to get in there. I have to get feedback. And I would give myself feedback. And usually 9 times out of 10, it was like, you're trash at everything. Like the photo's okay. Like, we're so hard on ourselves. And sometimes you don't even see the little things that you're like, oh. And even the thing that you probably are like, this is trash, I'm like, oh, that's so great. The only thing I would fix is this. And you're like, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
I know. You're like, oh.
It's so true. And that's when they're critiquing, or I shouldn't even say critiquing, when they're giving you your feedback in class. As soon as I step away and say that I'm done and have like Courtney or Julia come over to look at something, I'm like, I immediately see what they're going to point out.
Right before you're like, shit.
Like, you can walk away. I'm going to fix it before
you're like, actually, I'm going to put my hand down and you can circle back.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. Yeah, circle back.
An eyelash.
Right. You're like, oh, that was my bad. I have something in my eye. I have to go.
Yep. But it's been great.
So that's exciting. So do you have any, like, what are your goals for this year? So you're going to graduate. Do you have goals after that? Do you want to open your own space?
So I am currently looking for salons because my studio suite is tiny.
And you're in St. Louis still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then I just
What's
hired
your Instagram?
It is grace.extensionlounge.
So everyone write that down. Don't forget.
Kept it pretty simple.
Yeah.
But I just hired my first assistant in January, and she started out as a client of mine.
That's crazy.
So I did her NBR install last year, and then she was just starting cosmetology school. And then as we kept doing her hair, I was like, what are your plans? Like, what do you want to do? What are your goals? And she's like, I would really like to start out, assisting somebody just to kind of get my feet wet and get a feel for how a salon runs. I'm like, well, I'm actually going to be looking for an assistant soon because I'm swamped
Mm-hmm.
and I'm overwhelmed and I
Yeah.
need help. And she's 110% in with me. She is amazing. She wants to be as hands-on as I let her.
So she's graduated.
Yes.
So is she coming to convention also?
She is not. I've tried.
Tried.
She's not ready for
She's
it yet.
not there yet.
No, she's still very green in the hair world, which is great.
Yeah.
So I think her seeing me go through everything
Yeah.
is definitely, because when she talks to clients, she's like, yeah, I definitely want to do NBR, just saving up and waiting for my time. So
it's definitely, I've had to like reel myself back because when people are like, so I just don't know, what should I do? I'm like, you should do NBR. And they're like, yeah, no. I'm like, no, you should. And here's why. I'm like, here's all the things. And I kind of like word vomit. And I'm like, I'm super sorry. You probably didn't want all that. Like, I've really had to try to reel it back because I love it so much.
Yes.
That I'm like, you have to do this. And I actually, so a girl that lives like 45 minutes away in a different town, she actually messaged me and we were kind of talking back and forth. And she's like, can you give me business advice? Like, I really, like, how do you charge what you charge in a small town? And I was like, I literally just do.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I feel bad because I don't have any advice to give you.
Right.
My advice is to just do it. And then we got to talking and she came over and we talked back and forth and I did word vomit all my NBR things. I was like,
it's hard
listen,
not to.
It's so hard not to because it changes your life to your
does.
you don't have to be, you hear their story and you're like, you don't have to live like that.
As I did my numbers for January for the last 3 years and I doubled from January 22 to January of this year, almost more than double what I did last year.
Yeah, you posted your numbers.
Yeah, and I work 2, maybe 3 days a week now.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
It is possible. Well, and after we got done talking, she was like, fine. She was like, I'm doing it. I'm going all in. She's like, I will do it. And she's like, that was scary. And she's like, I haven't even told my fiance, but here we go.
Yep.
And I was like, right, here we go. And so she's pumped. She's excited. Yeah. And I just told her, I was like, hey, like, you can come out with me. I'm like, but I probably won't see you the entire time.
Right?
I was like, I won't see you. I wave at you, but yeah,
She'll meet so many awesome people.
That's what I said to her. What was funny is, so I said, because I was that girl, like I showed up to convention or to my first intensive and then the conventions following, and I was just like sitting in the back. I was like, I'm not very social. And in fact, I'm probably antisocial. I like social anxiety so bad, which is funny because being a trainer, you're on stage in front of hundreds of people.
Right.
Which is probably why I got up and cried, but it's fine. But I said, like, hey, you're going to have to make your own friends because I won't be able to see you. And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm good. Like, she's like, I'm totally good at making friends. I was like, oh, my gosh, well, if that's, I was like, good for you. I was like, this convention will be a breeze for you then because that's usually people's, like, they're like, oh, I don't know anyone, and I don't want to go and sit by myself. And she's like, oh, no. I was like, oh, well, then you're fine. Yeah.
My first intensive back in September, my whole family came, the husband and kids.
So cute.
And then this one, it's just me. And my husband's like, do you know any of the girls going? I'm like, I know one from my first intensive, but that's it. He goes, so what are you going to do? I'm like, make new friends.
Right. You're like, I'm going to make new friends.
Yeah. You don't need to be awkward about it. We're all here for the same reason. We all want to see each other win and grow and be the best version of ourselves.
Ironic is hairstylists aren't like that.
No.
Our tribe is like that.
Especially in St. Louis. It is
cutthroat.
Extremely cutthroat. It's disgusting. Like it hurts my heart because I was always told that I'm too competitive. I'm this and I'm that. I'm like, I'm competitive with myself because I want the best for myself and my family. And I'm going to do what it takes to be as successful as possible. But I also want you to be just as successful as me. Like, it doesn't just have to be a me thing. Like, everybody can.
You're like, we can all succeed. Yeah. Why can't we all do great? And is your town small?
No, I mean, no.
No?
It's not like in Los Angeles, but it's big. Yeah.
Have you had people that you found that you're like, oh, like, why is she charging that? Or why is she doing that? Have you had any of that?
A little bit. There was a place I worked at briefly, like maybe 6 months, and they do, I think they do the IBE method is what they're all getting certified in. And with being a rental stylist, I was doing NBR, and I think they were a little intimidated by the prices that I have, and then just the way I was running my business versus what they were doing. So instead of like asking questions like, hey, how are you doing that? Like, can I pick your brain on the business side of things? I tried telling them like, hey, why don't you cut back on how many clients you see, raise your prices, and then you're not going to work, 12, 13 hours a day seeing 8 people. Like, it's not necessary.
Right.
But instead it was how it felt very, let's try to make her feel so unwelcome here that she leaves on her own so we don't have to watch her stuff anymore.
Which is so upsetting.
It is.
You're just like, I'm doing my own thing. You do your own thing. What does me doing this have any reflection on you? It doesn't. Mind your own business.
And that's, I'm trying to bring a different type of salon environment to St. Louis is the goal.
Good. I love that.
So we'll see.
So good for you.
Yes, that's my goal for the 2023.
That's a big goal. Well, she said it out loud, so you guys have to go follow her and harass her about it. Well, that's it for today. And if you guys are wanting to know more about what the hell we're talking about, convention actually happens to have public tickets this year, which is really exciting.
I can't wait.
So if you're not like committed to like the full academy price and you just want to be like, I just baby steps, I just want to see what it's about, like that's a really good opportunity. And plus because of convention and it's so much energy and it's so fun, like what a great way to just like jump right in.
And if you need a friend, come find me.
That's
I
right.
will gladly befriend you.
She's a roomie.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you guys for listening. It was really fun getting to know you and talking to you. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I don't think I do.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you guys for listening and we'll talk to you later.
Bye, guys.